The life of Saint John Bosco, known as Don Bosco, began in the small village of Becci in Piedmont, northern Italy, on August 16, 1815. Born into a family of poor peasants, John Melchior Bosco faced challenges from an early age, marked by the premature death of his father, Francisco Bosco, when he was just 2 years old. Fatherless, John was raised by his mother, Margherita Occhiena, a deeply pious and determined woman who became the first major spiritual influence in his life. Margherita instilled in her children the values of hard work, faith, and love for others, which would shape John's future. From an early age, John exhibited sharp intelligence and a special sensitivity for helping others. He had a natural charisma that made him beloved by all, and his communication skills began to stand out when, as a child, he organized small shows to entertain his neighbors. During his early years, John had a prophetic dream that would deeply mark his life's mission. He saw himself surrounded by young people who were fighting and behaving badly, but a majestic figure, whom he identified as Our Lady, told him that he should educate them with love, not with violence. This dream, which he shared with his mother, was a prelude to the great work he would accomplish in the future. Margherita wisely encouraged John to seek God's will in his life, even when that meant great sacrifices for the family. Formal education was a challenge for John due to his family's poverty, but he persevered. He walked miles to attend classes and studied by candlelight at home, determined to overcome the limitations of his social condition. His desire to learn was accompanied by a deep love for prayer and Mass. From a young age, John showed signs of a vocation to the priesthood, and his devotion to the Eucharist and the Virgin Mary already stood out in his daily routine. John was also known for his incredible ability to gather other children around him. He entertained them with magic tricks, stories, and acrobatics, but always ended his performances with prayers and spiritual reflections, planting seeds of faith in the hearts of the young. At the age of 12, John began working as an apprentice in various professions, including tailoring, baking, and carpentry. These jobs not only helped him support his family, but also gave him practical skills that he would later use in his work with young people. It was during this time that he met Father Joseph Cafasso, a holy priest who became his spiritual mentor. Father Cafasso recognized John's potential and encouraged him to pursue his vocation to the priesthood, providing moral and financial support. John entered the seminary in Chieri at the age of 20, facing numerous financial and academic difficulties. However, his determination and faith sustained him, and he excelled as a student respected by teachers and peers. During his time in the seminary, he deepened his devotion to the Virgin Mary, particularly under the title of Mary, Help of Christians, which would become central to his spirituality and his future missionary work. John was ordained a priest on June 5, 1841, at the age of 26, amid great joy and emotion. He adopted the motto, "Give me souls and keep the rest," a phrase that captured his total dedication to the salvation of souls, especially those of young people. After his ordination, John Bosco was assigned to Turin, an industrial city facing great social problems, including extreme poverty, child exploitation, and a rising wave of secularism that was driving many away from the faith. Upon arriving in Turin, he was struck by the number of abandoned young people roaming the streets. Many were orphans, others had fled the countryside in search of work, but all shared the same misery and abandonment. Don Bosco began to work tirelessly with these young people, listening to their stories and offering advice, but soon realized that he needed a fixed place where he could welcome and educate them. With the few resources he had, he started his work in a small shed, where he gathered the young to teach them catechism, literacy, and even manual trades. This humble space would become the embryo of the future oratory of St. Francis de Sales. Choosing St. Francis de Sales as the patron of his oratory reflected the spirit of charity and patience that Don Bosco wished to imprint on his work. He believed that kindness was the key to winning the hearts of the young. Don Bosco faced resistance and criticism both from civil authorities and ecclesiastical ones, who did not understand his innovative educational method based on love, reason, and religion. However, his faith and determination kept him steadfast. Margherita Occhiena, now elderly, decided to join her son in Turin, becoming the first mother of the young people at the oratory. She cooked, counseled, and took care of the boys as if they were her own children, earning the respect of all. The number of young people served by Don Bosco grew rapidly, and he faced new challenges to keep the oratory running. In addition to financial resources, he needed to train educators who shared his vision. It was in this context that Don Bosco began to attract lay collaborators and priests who joined him in the mission to educate and evangelize young people. Many of these collaborators would become future Salesians. One of the distinguishing characteristics of Don Bosco's work was his infectious enthusiasm. He knew how to captivate the young, making them feel loved and valued, something many of them had never experienced before. Don Bosco also understood the importance of leisure and sports in the formation of young people. He encouraged games, outdoor activities, and moments of relaxation, always combined with moral and spiritual teachings. Over time, the oratory of St. Francis de Sales became a center of hope for hundreds of young people, offering not only education and professional training, but also a community where they could feel God's love. Don Bosco's work in Turin continued to grow exponentially, and he faced constant challenges to accommodate the increasing number of young people seeking shelter and education at the oratory of St. Francis de Sales. His trust in divine providence, however, never wavered. With the support of local benefactors, Don Bosco was able to rent and later purchase a larger plot of land to expand the oratory. This new structure allowed for the construction of workshops, classrooms, and spaces for prayer, consolidating his work. One of Don Bosco's most remarkable innovations was the preventive system of education, based on 3 pillars: reason, religion, and love. He believed that the best way to educate was to prevent mistakes through constant accompaniment and the creation of a trusting environment. Unlike authoritarian educational methods common at the time, Don Bosco emphasized dialogue and understanding. He encouraged young people to develop their skills and talents, helping them find dignity in work and Christian life. Margherita Occhiena, living at the oratory, became an irreplaceable maternal figure for the young people. Her presence reinforced the family environment that Don Bosco wished to create, and her simplicity and holiness left a profound mark on all who knew her. In addition to basic education, Don Bosco offered training in trades like carpentry, printing, and tailoring, allowing young people to acquire practical skills to enter the workforce and break free from poverty. However, Don Bosco's work was not without difficulties. He faced strong opposition from anti-clerical groups who saw his influence among the young as a threat, as well as criticisms from sectors of the church itself, which considered his ideas bold. Once, Don Bosco was physically attacked by opponents while walking the streets of Turin. It is believed that his survival was due to the miraculous intervention of his dog, Grigio, a mysterious animal that often appeared to protect him in moments of danger. Don Bosco began to envision the need to form a religious congregation to perpetuate his work. He wanted to create a community of men willing to dedicate their lives to the education and evangelization of youth, especially the most needy. In 1859, he founded the Society of St. Francis de Sales, better known as the Salesians, in honor of the saint who symbolized Christian sweetness and patience. The new congregation was approved by the church, and its growth was rapid. The first Salesians were mostly young men who had been educated by Don Bosco at the oratory. Inspired by his example, they embraced the commitment to serve young people with the same zeal and love that he demonstrated. The Salesian spirituality was based on joy, trust in God, and devotion to the Virgin Mary. Don Bosco emphasized that holiness could be lived simply in everyday life through work and the fulfillment of duties with love. Parallel to the founding of the Salesians, Don Bosco also cared for poor and abandoned girls. With the help of St. Mary Domenica Mazzarello, he founded the Institute of the Daughters of Mary Help of Christians in 1872, dedicated to the education and training of young women. The devotion to Mary Help of Christians became central in Don Bosco's spirituality. He often said that all the graces received in his work came from the intercession of Our Lady, whom he affectionately called "She who did everything." In 1868, Don Bosco completed the construction of the Basilica of Mary Help of Christians in Turin, a dream he had held in his heart for years. The basilica became a symbol of his trust in divine providence and a place of pilgrimage for believers from all over the world. As the Salesian work expanded, Don Bosco began sending missionaries to other countries. In 1875, he organized the first Salesian missionary expedition to Argentina, planting the seeds of a global presence. Don Bosco believed that education and the gospel were powerful tools for transforming societies. His missionaries brought not only spiritual formation, but also practical assistance to the most vulnerable populations. Despite his success, Don Bosco continued to live simply and humbly. He dedicated long hours to work and prayer, often sacrificing his health for the well-being of young people. His example of holiness was a constant source of inspiration. The tireless work of Don Bosco attracted the support of influential figures, including Pope Pius IX, who recognized the value of his mission and gave the Salesian congregation his full blessing and support. Don Bosco also wrote several books and educational manuals addressing themes of morality, spirituality, and pedagogical practice. He wanted his preventive system to be accessible to educators worldwide. Don Bosco's charisma transcended cultural and social barriers. Young people from all backgrounds found in his presence a sense of security and hope, and he was often called Father and Master of the youth. Don Bosco also had the gift of prophecy. He often made predictions about the future, which impressively came to fruition. These extraordinary gifts reinforced the belief of many that he was a man specially chosen by God. Despite facing criticism, Don Bosco maintained an unwavering spirit of joy. He believed that joy was essential in Christian life and said that a sad saint is a sad saint, encouraging everyone to trust in God's goodness. Don Bosco's devotion to the Eucharist was central in his life. He encouraged young people to participate frequently in Mass and communion, convinced that these sacraments were indispensable sources of spiritual strength. Over the years, Don Bosco's fame spread across Europe, and his work began to inspire others to follow in his footsteps. His tireless dedication made him a living example of what it means to live the gospel. Don Bosco frequently faced financial difficulties due to the scale of his work, but he never let this discourage him. He fully trusted in divine providence, and miraculously, resources always arrived at the right moment. He also cared about the spiritual and moral formation of his collaborators, dedicating time to guide them and encourage them to grow in faith. For Don Bosco, the holiness of his educators was fundamental to the success of the mission. The final years of his life were marked by the continued expansion of the Salesian work. Despite his declining health, Don Bosco continued to work tirelessly, driven by his passion for the salvation of souls. His humility and simplicity remained intact, even as he was recognized and honored by ecclesiastical and civil leaders. For him, everything was a work of God and Mary Help of Christians, and he attributed all merit to them. On January 31, 1888, Don Bosco passed away in Turin, surrounded by his spiritual children. His death was mourned by thousands of young people and adults who had found in him a true father and spiritual guide. Don Bosco's death did not signify the end of his mission, but the beginning of a legacy that would continue to transform lives around the world. His work was firmly established and ready to grow under the leadership of his successors. Father Michael Rua, one of Don Bosco's first disciples, took over the leadership of the Salesian congregation after his death. With dedication and fidelity to the spirit of his founder, he worked to expand the Salesian mission. In a short time, the congregation grew in the number of members and geographical reach. Schools, oratories, professional training centers, and missions began to appear in various countries, bringing education and the gospel to the most needy young people. The Salesian spirituality, centered on joy, charity, and devotion to the Eucharist and the Virgin Mary, became a source of inspiration for educators and missionaries. Don Bosco's preventive system was adopted and adapted in various cultures. The Daughters of Mary Help of Christians, founded by Don Bosco in partnership with St. Mary Domenica Mazzarello, also grew rapidly. They became a fundamental pillar in the Salesian mission, especially in the education of girls and women. The fame of Don Bosco's sanctity began to attract the Church's attention shortly after his death. Many already considered him a saint during his life, due to the numerous miracles attributed to his intercession and his extraordinary kindness. In 1890, the process of beatification of Don Bosco was officially initiated by the Church. Testimonies from people who knew him and documents that recounted his life and works were gathered for the process. During the beatification process, several miracles attributed to Don Bosco's intercession were investigated. Among them, inexplicable healings and miraculous interventions that confirmed his closeness to God. In 1929, Pope Pius V, who had great admiration for Don Bosco, proclaimed him blessed, officially recognizing his heroic virtue and the authenticity of his mission. It was a moment of great joy for the entire Salesian family. 5 years later, in 1934, Don Bosco was canonized by Pope Pius V. During the ceremony, he was declared Father and Master of the Youth, a title that perfectly summarizes his life and mission. The canonization of Don Bosco was celebrated by millions of faithful around the world. His example of simple and accessible holiness inspired not only priests and religious, but also lay people who wished to serve God in their everyday lives. The title of Father and Master of the Youth recognized Don Bosco's unparalleled dedication to young people, especially those who were poorer and marginalized. He understood that education was not just about knowledge, but about love and comprehensive formation. Following his canonization, devotion to Saint John Bosco grew even more, and many churches and schools were dedicated to him. His name became a symbol of hope and renewal for young people on all continents. The Salesian missionaries continued to carry Don Bosco's message to new lands. They reached Asia, Africa, and Oceania, where education and the gospel were instruments of social and spiritual transformation. Don Bosco's vision for young people continued to be realized through the Salesian works. He believed that by offering educational opportunities and a solid foundation in faith, it was possible to transform lives and build a more just society. In Brazil, the Salesians arrived in 1883, a few years before Don Bosco's death. Their presence soon expanded, and they played an important role in the education and evangelization of young people in various regions of the country. Don Bosco's missionary dream found special resonance in Latin America, where he is considered one of the greatest influences of Christian education. Many schools, colleges, and universities in the region bear his mark. A central aspect of Saint John Bosco's legacy is his message of hope. He firmly believed that every young person, regardless of their background or condition, had the potential to achieve great things with God's help. The devotion to Mary Help of Christians, promoted by Don Bosco, also grew worldwide. Many faithful found comfort and strength in this devotion, which continues to be a spiritual pillar of the Salesian family. The Basilica of Mary Help of Christians in Turin became one of the most important pilgrimage centers for devotees of Saint John Bosco. There, many go to seek inspiration, give thanks for received graces, and ask for the saint's intercession. Another important landmark of Don Bosco's legacy is the movement of former Salesian students, composed of people who passed through his schools and oratories. Inspired by their education, they continue to live and propagate his values in the world. The feasts of Saint John Bosco, celebrated on January 31st, are occasions of great joy for the Salesian family. They are marked by liturgical celebrations, cultural activities, and moments of reflection on his life and mission. Many scholars consider Saint John Bosco a pioneer in modern pedagogy. His preventive system influenced not only the field of religious education, but also secular pedagogy, highlighting the role of affection and understanding. Don Bosco's example continues to inspire educators who work in difficult contexts. His message that love and patience are more effective than repression remains as relevant today as it was in the 19th century. Beyond education, Don Bosco's legacy encompasses active charity. He taught that faith without works is dead, and his life was a constant testimony of service to the poor and marginalized. The Salesian spirituality emphasizes accessible holiness. Don Bosco showed that it is possible to be holy by living joyfully, fulfilling daily duties, and helping others, especially those in need. The Salesian family today includes not only the Salesians and the Daughters of Mary Help of Christians, but also other branches, such as the Salesian Cooperators and the Volunteers of Don Bosco, who work in various mission areas. The Salesian work also stands out for its commitment to vocational training. Many young people who would otherwise be condemned to poverty have found dignity and hope through technical education inspired by Don Bosco. Throughout the centuries, Saint John Bosco has been recognized as a model of Christian leadership. He combined courage, creativity, and unwavering faith, facing challenges with the confidence that God would always provide. The Church continues to recognize Saint John Bosco as one of the great modern saints. He's often cited as an example of how faith can transform society through love and service to others. The impact of Saint John Bosco continues to live in the 21st century, with his Salesian work present in over 130 countries. The values he preached, love, education, and faith, remain relevant and transformative in a world that still faces poverty, inequality, and moral crises. Salesian education is recognized for its holistic approach, which not only imparts knowledge, but also forms character and values. This methodology, inspired by Don Bosco's preventive system, is widely used in schools and institutions. In Africa, Salesian work plays a vital role, providing educational opportunities for thousands of young people facing challenges such as extreme poverty, armed conflicts, and lack of access to basic services. In Asia, especially in India and the Philippines, the Salesians are pioneers in assisting street children and promoting human rights. They also promote initiatives to combat child labor, in line with the ideals of Saint John Bosco. In Latin America, the Salesian mission continues to transform lives in marginalized communities. In Brazil, the Salesians are known for their technical schools, universities, and social projects that rescue young people from drugs and crime. Salesian spirituality remains a beacon for youth. Events like the World Youth Days often highlight Don Bosco's charisma, encouraging young people to live their faith with joy and commitment. Saint John Bosco is a special example for Christian educators who seek to combine discipline and tenderness. He demonstrated that true teaching goes beyond the classroom and includes the formation of the heart and soul. Beyond education, Don Bosco inspires movements for social justice. His emphasis on dignity and inclusion is in harmony with the Church's social doctrine, which seeks to combat inequalities and promote the common good. Devotion to Saint John Bosco is deeply linked to trust in divine providence. Many devotees turn to his intercession in times of difficulty, confident that he, as a spiritual father, continues to care for his children. Pope St. John Paul II often cited St. John Bosco as a model of evangelization. His ability to communicate the faith simply yet profoundly is an example for the new evangelization in times of secularization. The Basilica of Mary Help of Christians in Turin, where Saint John Bosco's remains are located, remains a place of fervent pilgrimage. Faithful from around the world visit the site to give thanks and ask for his intercession. The expansion of Salesian works included the creation of Catholic universities, such as the Salesian University of Rome, which promotes the formation of leaders committed to social justice and education based on Christian values. The miracles attributed to Saint John Bosco continue to be reported, reinforcing his powerful intercession. Interestingly, many of these miracles involve young people and children, confirming his special role as a protector of youth. The message of Saint John Bosco is a source of hope for parents and educators facing the challenges of raising children in a world full of temptations. He reminds us that love and patience are the greatest allies in the formation of the young. Today, Saint John Bosco is more than a saint of the past. He is a guide for the future. His vision of a world where all young people have the chance to realize their potential continues to inspire thousands of people to work for a more just and loving society.